On a previous episode, I talked about being homeless for 9 years, and one of the things I observed in that period of time moving from one house to the other is that every house shaped my behavior considerably. And of course, logically, the extension is what happens when you go to work every day, and how do the spaces at work shape our behavior. So today I'm with the co-founders of Places People Love, Ricardo Peralta and Vladic Roskin, and we're going to talk about what they're doing with their business and also what they're doing to help energy flow better in workplaces and workspaces. So let's start off by, how did you two get into this field?
We can start by telling a little bit about our story and how we met. It hasn't been that long time ago. Actually, since May, me and Ricardo, we ran into each other on a party in Vancouver Design Week. We were both architects. It's just one of those moments where you just start talking out of nowhere and everything seems to align, and you start dreaming and you start connecting, all the dots in your head, like, wow, maybe this is the moment to just start doing actually something we really believe in, what we want to change. Because as an architect, after working for about 8 years, I really had this kind of void. I could describe it in different ways. One way is there's so much energy we spend on constructing our places where we spend so much time in our daily lives. There is so little positive result, I would say, in the people that use it. So for me, it was always like, how can we really try to redesign the process of how we treat our spaces, and where we put the human really at the center of the design process. For my part, I've always been very fascinated by people. I've always read a lot about how business leaders become successful, how artists are doing great work, just really getting deep in who they are, why they became the way they became, and really why do we do the things we actually do. So for me, people was always a red thread through my life, and I always thought architecture really lacks that really deep connection to the actual users. For me, I always found a lot of architects producing incredibly beautiful work, but it's beautiful in the magazines, but I lacked the voice of the user, the voice of the customer, you could say, that we're using the building. So, and then when meeting Ricardo, he was really kind of specialized in the energies of our environment and of the people and how that influence each other and affects each other. So that kind of more external influences on people, while I was really concerned with the internal stories, how they influence who we become, right? And I thought putting that together would be just a good start in call it a kind of organism that we want to grow with Places People Love, where we take really we start by looking at who are the users, why are they going to be there, where do they want to go, and how well do they know themselves, and all that, all important questions to ask before you actually start thinking about what kind of space will be best for them to occupy. So,
Ricardo, how did you end up here?
One of the beautiful things is that it's been a very fun journey based on alignment of values, on the care we have for people, on how we decided to come to Vancouver. It's because we care also so much about being close to nature, and all those what I call ingredients or resonances made us meet and then think about how can we bring all this together to create those places that really become an extension of who we are. Those places, one day we were joking and we said let's do spaces that hug you, kind of like that. Those spaces that are warm, those spaces that you feel good at, those spaces to celebrate your life. And how could that be extended into organizations, into all kind of built environments that we are surrounded with. So it's been a fun journey, a very, very human-friendly journey, and it's part of the spirit of Places People Love.
Well, it's also part of the spirit of great workplaces as well, because I know, we were talking earlier before we started the program that there are some companies that implemented the open office idea. And of course, the first thing people do is get in their cubicle and set up it so to make it personal and it's actually cut down on collaboration instead of open it up. So when you're designing spaces, what are the things you consider to keep the flow intact so that people naturally want to go? Because I know we've had this certainly in Vancouver, but also in other parts of the world where they've got co-working spaces. The idea was to do a co-working space so there'd be collaboration. I mean, WeWork has got a specific design they have. What's different from what you do and WeWork, for example?
Well, we can talk a little bit how we start each project and going back again to the really like human aspect of before we actually design anything that's visible, there is a big chunk of research and really just connecting to the people that are running the actual organization, which is very, very essential. So we see space as really like a platform for human connection. So it's not a piece of real estate, you know. It's really like this is the boundaries. The walls are the boundaries with certain specifics. There's so much light coming in. There's this kind of air quality, and these boundaries. These are for us the kind of circumstance that define where we can create a platform for people just to connect, feel safe, to feel a sense of belonging, to feel that they can just be themselves and they can really like. Share knowledge, share skill, you know, be autonomous, really produce not only their best work, but just be comfortable as people, you know, because data shows like that we spend actually about 90% of the time inside in our lifetimes, right? So if you consider that,
that's a lot.
And then you look at the state of our office spaces today, and you think like we spend like usually 9 to 5 in these spaces. And how important it really is, but the quality of that space for us. So what we usually do is we get together with the leadership team as first, and we do a discovery process. We learn who they are, what their values are, why did they start a company, and where are they trying to go with it. It's really like like the seed of what we're going to do is going to depend on those people, because also the people that work for them will kind of, you know, you join an organization not only because you do a certain kind of work, but also because you kind of look up to, you know, the business, the organization itself. So we really try to dig deeper into the vision and the values of the leadership. That's the first thing. Another thing is also creating this kind of awareness, you know, as architects and also just like people. You know, we do a lot of research around not only the technical elements, but also the people side of it. You know, how do we make people feel comfortable in a space? You know, what are the elements that influence us? It's all about like, if you look at a person and how it interacts with their surroundings. So there's like the physical surrounding, of course, but there's also the people, which is also part of the interaction. And then nowadays there's a lot of technology, right? So we're becoming more and more mobile. We work remote. So technology is definitely an element that affects us. You know, if you just think about the computer and all the ways it surrounds us, of the Wi-Fi's and Bluetooth, I mean, it all influences us. You can't beat it. And what we do is we create this kind of awareness through workshops where we say, look, this is what we know, this is what we see now in this current space, and this is what we can do. Then we start thinking about how actually design can influence the people, collective actually, so the leadership and the people that work in that organization to be more creative, to be more productive. And also, like, you know, if you think about what are the greatest challenges organizations today, is also to attract the right talent and also to keep them. So that's another thing that we kind of trying to envision for them, how they can actually, throughout our changing times, I would say, because there's so much things technological-wise changing, business-wise, it's everywhere there's, you know, financial pressure, social pressure, cultural pressure. How can we actually provide a framework for those organizations to deal with that change? And again, like space is the physical space is always one facet, but it's not the only one. It's also a lot about like how we create a good culture within that organization, so people really love to work there. You know, that's why it's places people love. It's really about like giving meaning to a place. So space plus meaning is a place. That's how I kind of giving meaning to a place that people will want to wake up and they will know I go there for the people that I love, the work that I love to do, and I respect the leaders that are running this organization. That is what we're trying to envision. Then coming back a little bit about the landscape offices, because I think this is I think what we've seen in the last 10 years, where there was this hype of creating these open spaces everywhere. I think what we always lacked is this kind of understanding that we are all individuals with our own dreams and desires and our own mindsets, and not everybody likes to be all open in a space and just watching each other and always in constantly disturbing each other in a way. So we're really realizing now that it's also important to provide more kind of privacy corners or nooks in a space, so people can choose whether they're going to be very open and working collaboratively, or in a more enclosed environment where they can focus really on their project. So that's what I just wanted to have around us.
And then coming back to people and leadership, it's really, are people in your generation happy? How are their lives? How are they living their days? Are they fulfilled? Are they healthy? How does that align with your organization? How does that align with the values of your leadership? And where do you want to go as a leader? And then from that, then a whole range of perspectives and solutions we can come up with. It's always also an interdisciplinary approach. That is very important. We approach this in an interdisciplinary view. We have so many different people being part of the community, including designers, including architects, and including that. But it's never just one view. It's a collaborative view. And it's a collaborative work with the leadership. That is very important. It's like a back and forth, and we together create the final result.
Mm-hmm. So I know that there's going to be some element of challenge posed by where an office is located, like in a building, for example, where the air ventilation sucks, mm-hmm. and all of these kinds of constraints are there. Not enough windows for the outside, not being able to see nature, or not being able to even see the weather. Mm-hmm. How do you work with those kinds of constraints?
Yeah. Well, obviously, every human needs some essential things in the room that they occupy. Like if you look at the basic pyramid of Maslow, right? Very important things are really feeling warm and feeling like you have enough light. And of course, the air is very, very important, especially in the case of Vancouver, because we're working in a lot of old buildings. So obviously, these are really the basic elements that in the technical side, we always recommend as first. Because if you don't have that kind of basic comfort, then nothing else. Culture, forget technology. You're lost. you really
can't compensate for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so light, air quality. We are like plants. We need light. We need good air. We need room to move, and we need to feel safe. They're all the basic things that really need to be solved as soon as possible. Yeah. And then after that, of course, look at the other facets of culture and technology and social interaction between the people.
I know that certainly in the work I've been doing, it's really hard to get decision makers to grasp the things that don't appear super obvious. In other words, it's more of an indirect mm-hmm. impact on people, productivity, health, and happiness. And most of the focus is on what's the bottom line, how are we doing on our profit, and mm-hmm. forgetting completely that there's a wider environment, that an ecosystem that actually produces that mm-hmm. productivity. How do you have those conversations with the management group of people that are really fixed on just cost savings, which this certainly in Vancouver is a very cost savings orientation, mm-hmm. may not be that way, and elsewhere in the world I do quite a bit of work over in Europe, and I don't know what it's like in other parts, but how do you have those conversations so the minds get opened up a bit and there's appreciation for the intangible?
Yeah. Well, definitely, I think that is when we also were starting a company. We knew this was going to be our biggest challenge because, like you say, it's an intangible quality. And I guess one of the strategies we're using is, so we promise for organizations that we're gonna increase the productivity and creativity of their people, and that we're gonna make sure that their workspace actually attracts talent and keeps it. But to be able to promise that, we also want to show that internally in our company we are actually doing that already ourselves. So for us it's really as important as our clients as is our community that we are actually creating within our own company. The people that we are attracting are in a way also our clients. We are trying to provide for them the great space for growth, and to just have a safe space to exchange ideas and to give them enough autonomy to produce their best work, so no micromanagement, and really to create this innovative way of running a design business. And so when we're talking to clients, we can also always refer to our own case study in a way, within our own company. That is one strategy we use.
And then another one, it's defining it also with the leadership. It's a conversation, and it's the willingness to grow that has to come from the organization. If there is not that willingness to grow, then it's very hard to come to new strategies or to new solutions. So in those conversations, in that openness, in that willingness to do things differently, then we don't have to think about either or. Then it's what do you want, how can it be done differently, what is different possibility, and it's an addition. And we always speak about building bridges, like building bridges and working collaboratively, and then doing things together. And then if it was possible before with the new technology, with new evaluation, with new research, how can it be done differently? It's like expanding. It's not like using something differently. We see it more as an expanding together with new tools, with new people, with new views, with new possibilities that can take the organization to a whole new level, and people with that. And that is beautiful.
Yeah, and it's definitely in my world, it's definitely a great way of framing it, because that is what it is. It's just a widening of the peripheral vision to be able to take more into the space and be able to see what's going on. So as opposed to making a switch from option A to option B. So no, that's great.
Yeah, and I think also one of the biggest part of the work we want to do is creating the awareness, first of all, because especially for business leaders, they're great in running their ship. They have a ship and they know which direction it goes, but they don't know how best to take care of other things. They just don't have time for that, or they don't have the resource for that. And we want to be that kind of really partner to support them in just offering them, first of all, what is possible, what is out there. That's why we are working in cross-disciplinary teams. Everybody has its own perspective from their own field on issues. So we're trying to combine it to create that greater awareness, where from they can realize, oh look, this is something I've never thought about. That's probably could change that, so I become more resilient towards it. Future uncertainty and future change.
Well, and definitely what we know from the sciences is that the more of a divergence, the more diversity you've got in the room, the better your outcome's going to be, particularly in the context of complex systems, which organizations are. So I love the consistency with your approach. Yeah. So it sounds like, if I think about this for a moment, you've got two approaches. One would be, let's look at the metrics and use the metrics to demonstrate it. Because I'm thinking now of my colleague in the Netherlands, Eric Wisman, who did a lot of spatial design, but people that had no idea what he was doing. But they knew that the metrics would change. So he'd go in there and move things around, and everybody would be happier, be more productive. What did you do? And they wouldn't be able to grasp it, but the metrics showed you something. And the other version of it is that, or it's not either or, it's both. But the other version is that you see the connection and that you realize it without having to have numbers to show you the difference. Fair to say, or?
Well, I'm not sure if I understand right. So if you mean that we use as much data, as much as we are a data company, research, and also like the kind of more intangible, really the human aspect that we really, we're trying to work with. That's definitely true, yeah. So from the beginning, we wanted to, so we have these 4 principles that we've written out, and one of them is we want to a marriage between art and science. So for us, it's really important, the data and the facts and the previous research, because there's such an immense amount of research already done around, let's say, co-working or working places, so which we apply, which we use, and we create feedback out of that, and we apply that. A very big aspect of it is, of course, the human side, which is nothing to do with numbers or data. It's really like just being completely ourselves in our most pure human form. How can we have a great conversation? You know, from that, everything starts. You know, there's nothing data around that. It's just like opening up to each other and starting to talk about what is possible. You know, what are the problems, and how can we create just a better organization or workplace. You know.
I think it involves a lot of going inwards, we call it. It's really like a process of going inside the organization and the leadership and asking those questions as like, what is success for you? Mm-hmm. Like, how do you define success for your company? What is in your vision a successful group of people, of a successful group of team? And from those deep questions, then we evaluate, we define KPIs, and then we go for like to achieve them, like together with the organization. But every organization is different, and then we see how the space around it's influencing that human aspect. Then we can go into details like how is your biological system being influenced? How is the attention there? How is like so many things like the surrounding environment affecting you? Are you like in Vancouver? I'm surprised. Like we have such an amazing scenery. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we it's like we're missing on it. Like we're living in these boxes, dark. Oh my God, no, yeah, like that. It's and we live in one of the most beautiful places on earth. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's like you come into a different world, or sometimes dungeons, to work for 8 hours a day. So yeah, so it's just like really, it's important to bring also that awareness. It's part of what we're doing. Mm-hmm.
So we're sitting in your offices. We're at a long table here, and we could just as easily move this into a more of a corporate setting, and it would look like a boardroom table, except it's not. It's more funky. It's definitely more friendly. It's wood, so it's warm. And beside it is a kitchen. Let's first talk about how that changes. If you're sitting around a table like this with a social environment that you can just pick up, go grab some food, and sit around and chat, what does that change the experience for people in the company between that and going to a boardroom where it's formal and everybody's got to sit around and stare at a whiteboard?
Yeah. Well, we try to challenge some of the conceptions of traditional typologies. Like sometimes we try to experiment with textures, with the layout, with how what are you feeling in the space. Sometimes we tend to miss that. Not only what you're doing in the space, how you're being in the space, what are you feeling in the space, and what leads you that, like all that is around you. So every texture, every light, like everything that you have around you, it's impacting you all the time, whether you're conscious or not, that affects you. So if you have a kitchen, if you have the awareness that there is coffee there, like the experience of the space will be different, like the lighting will be different. Then it's not only a place where you have to perform as machines, it's a place where you flow from one experience to another experience to another experience, which is what makes us human. And then you work, and then the ideas flow, and then you have interaction, and then you have collisions, and then you meet other people, and then you look at other people's eyes. And things arise from another level from those interactions. So it's a meeting, and it's a meeting space, and it's also an encounter. It's a space for encounters, and it's a space for chatting. And it's also, then again, it's not either or. We also like to give choices because we have all these flows all the time in our energy. So and we are all different people. Like we all have different personalities. You cannot have the same space for everybody. For some hours you may need like a very enclosed space, and for other hours you may need to be more in connection. And for others, like now we have this more coffee shop feeling vibe and laid back vibe. But it's also necessary. So it's not all the time like this very hard corporate setting. Like even every texture tells you a story. If it's wood, it's different. If the light is different, if you see a plant next to you, it's different because we are biological beings. So just knowing that all of what it's run becomes an extension of you, it's very important.
You know, I can remember when I was doing some research myself into workspaces at least 10 years ago, a lot longer actually. But there was something about the fluorescent light bulbs and the radiation coming off, electromagnetic radiation, the EMF coming off of those light bulbs was blocking alpha brainwave states. And of course, you know, companies are busy asking for innovation, but in order to innovate, you've got to be able to both be relaxed and be creative, and that's your alpha state. So it's almost like you're putting in lighting that's going to suppress exactly what you need in your people, and then blame your people for not being able to perform at that level. It's just, it's crazy. Did you want to add something to what Ricardo said?
No, I think you said it pretty well. I was just thinking like to how we came to design this space is like really to have a long conversations with the owner to discover what is her ambition with it. And in this scenario, we had two co-working spaces with the new one, which is downstairs, and this old one was kind of considered as old, so people didn't come here. So the question to us was, how do we recultivate the experience so the kind of two places get reconnected? And for this particular space, we added an extra layer in the sense of that the co-working space that is downstairs is all about productivity. It's quite organized, you know, it's quite like aligned. It really feels like somewhere where you want to go, you want to sit, and you want to produce with your team or alone. With this space, we wanted to create a more creative vibe, I would say, where there's more this kind of chaotic feel, I would say, like more textures, more colors, more variety, and warm materials.
Intimacy.
Yeah, intimacy too. It's coziness, because it's less spacious than the other one. So people, I think, love coming here more for this kind of introspective mood, you know, just where they want to read a book or maybe have a close chat with somebody. So that's what we're trying to create here. And the materials that we used here were especially thought of in the sense of this feminine energy that we wanted to bring to the space, because that was another demand or request from the owner. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. Now let's roll back, because when we were just having a moment break there, we were talking about the experience, some story that I heard about horses being across the street from this company, and the people at lunchtime would go across the street, visit the horses, and so forth. And then the company moved, and its criteria were not must be close to horses. Their criteria was just need the space, and then they noticed their productivity had gone down because people weren't going over, and it was directly tied. They managed to establish that. How does that? I mean, when we look at this, small and medium-sized companies, for the most part, are just looking at it from a pragmatic point of view. Look, I've got the space, it's 5,000 square feet, it's got a rent I can afford, and they just buy it without actually taking into account any of the things we've been talking about so far. Mm-hmm. So how can you kind of bring in that design mind into the decision making, or what thoughts could you offer to decision makers who are choosing spaces that would help them be smarter about that and look at it through that lens?
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is that there are so many layers that can be taken into account when selecting a space, and then like people usually would look at the price and maybe location, but from the location there are so many things, like the views that you have, the ventilation, the textures, the lighting that it's already available. Like every single detail will affect in the end, even if it's subtle. Like it has an impact. Like you cannot avoid that because you are there. Like you will be exposed to that all the time. So it's about really analyzing all of the surroundings. Like we do it on different layers. We analyze the environmental physics, we call it. So it's all about the surroundings. It's all about that, what it's impacting your being on different levels, your biological system, your energy system, your attention levels, and then we also implement social dynamics, which is a whole other layer about how as humans will tend to behave. And we overlap also technology. So with all this framework that we have created, we approach the decision making and the selection of the space, which becomes something, and this is very important, strategical for the company, like for the future of the company, because it will be such a big investment that sometimes you cannot change from one place to another, like every year. Like you'll be there, especially if it's your headquarters. It becomes an investment. It can increase the whole productivity and experience and outcomes of your company. So it becomes strategic.
Going back to those horses, that is very, very so interesting. I mean, but again, that's I think why data is so important. So nowadays we can show that, for example, the realization that we are really just innately human, and like simple things, I would say, like horses can just change how we feel in a day. You know, just this kind of contact with nature. You know, it's not only about coming to an office and producing whatever you have to produce. It's like also these moments where you just go and you have a nice view somewhere, or you can go and maybe touch a horse and see animals that really influence, that can change our mood for the whole day. And it's like Ricardo said, these little subtleties that are just important to just people make aware of them, so that we can create various possibilities where we can pick from to make a space more interesting, more exciting.
It's funny because Biomimicry Institute has a website called asknature.org, and you go there to plug in, ideas that nature can offer through these very sophisticated technologies. They're way more sophisticated than our own, and from that you get inspiration into what you want to do. So it strikes me that it would be kind of really cool to find a company that's progressive enough to think about an innovation garden, a biomimicry garden, where you would just go and sit and study the systems, because that's the other part that's often forgotten. But study the systems and just look at where is the efficiencies here that we're overlooking in our own space. How does a leaf produce energy without beat, heat, and treat?
Yeah, and then I've read recently this interesting study. Now that we're talking about data, it's a very simple study. It's been done in a hospital where they looked at patients that had a window that were healing,
yes,
and patients that didn't have a window and how they were healing. And it clearly stated that the patients that had a window with a view, they just healed way quicker than the ones without. It's just this connection to something so subtle as just a view and seeing movement or trees. It can change how your body reacts to your state of being.
And I love the environmental physics idea, because it definitely changes how decisions get made as a consequence. I mean, there's a direct line to that. So I want to thank you both very much. Let's talk a bit about where people can go for more information on your company and what you're doing.
Yeah, well, at the moment, the best place to go is our website, which is placespeoplelove.ca. Eventually, we are expanding also our social media channels, which are an Instagram account. We welcome everybody to check it out, and if anybody's interested, there's a join the movement button. We're happy to get to know you.
Yeah, get a movement going for better spaces. I know that in 2013 I interviewed Mark. Actually, 2009 I interviewed Mark Romero Music, and Mark's the former CEO of a semiconductor firm, and he started producing music that creates health in the body, like it's quantum coherent. So it's, you listen to it and you feel better immediately. And so he's been 10 years doing that on a personal, health basis. But now it's time to move it into corporations, and I can see a real synergy between what he's been doing for years and what you're doing here on the edge.
We love those collaborations. That it's all about, like, we are creating, like just putting. We're all creators, and just putting everybody together to do these amazing collaborations. It's great. Yeah.
Anything else either one of you want to add?
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
No, thank you. You are listening to the Inspirational Insights podcast with Donna Jones as your host. In terms of the conversation we've had today, the work that has been recently done is a chapter in From Hierarchy to High Performance, where we're talking about health and workplace health. And I also did a chapter in The Intelligence of the Cosmos, which is about the deep dynamics in organizations that this conversation very much informs, because we're really working with the invisible things that people can't see, but do have a big impact on workplace relationships, on human behavior, on performance, on peace, and well-being as well. So thanks very much for listening in. There'll be more programs coming. I'm just taking a little bit of a break from the 2-week schedule, so I'd appreciate it if you just check back in periodically. Donna Jones from insight2action.com. and also on Facebook at From Insight to Action, and on Twitter at EPDAWNA_Jones. Do contact me for speaking and workshops and decision making, and particularly the transformational mindset that's required to handle high-speed, complex change.